Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Real Freedom Podcast. And today is an exciting day because I get to share the story of one of our agents, Mike Gengler, sharing his story about doing his first flip. And so one of the cool things about our team is we love to work with investors. We want to work with people that want to build wealth. And we also have people on our team that want to help build their own wealth. And, flipping a home is a great way to start to do that. And so, Mike's been an agent on our team for a while now. And we decided as a team, we wanted to tackle a flip project together. And so Mike's going to share his perspective and his story on that. And hopefully give you guys listening a chance. If you haven't done a flip before, if you haven't done investing before, this will give you an opportunity of the things to think about and how to get started. So welcome, Mike. We are so excited to have you share about this flip.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's an exciting thing to try out, and I was glad that the team was supportive and we were able to do it together.
Why don't you just go ahead and give a little bit of a background of maybe some of the things that we were looking for, some of the things that were important in finding a flip? Because I know for a lot of people, it's like, gosh, I don't even know where to start. What's something that's going to make a good flip? How do I know that the numbers are going to work out? Gosh, I don't even know how to estimate repair costs. What do I do? So if you just kind of want to maybe start with that, what were some of those initial considerations about, where we wanted to find it, how we wanted to find it, and what that looked like?
Yeah, those were all great things that we had to take into consideration. I mean, I would say the most important part about that is finding a good calculator, either online or making one yourself, so that at the end of the day, kind of what the end result will be, assuming all of your numbers are correct. I mean, that's a big part of it is, all right, if I do, assuming I've done all this right, I should make X dollars at the end of this. So that would be step one. And there's lots of calculators online, or we can provide you the one that we use with the team as well. I mean, there's going to be numbers that you need. Purchase price is obviously an important one. How much you're spending on closing costs to close the initial deal. And then how much the loan's going to cost you to hold it while you're doing all this. You need to account for all the expenses that you're going to have throughout the term of this project.
Utilities, permits.
Yep. Utilities.
Dumpsters.
All of these things. Yes. Dumpsters for sure. So It's like you helped with it, and that we got 4 dumpsters instead of 1 dumpster like we budgeted for. So
right.
We were going through properties and we're looking at all this. I think a big part of it is figuring out each project that you're going to do within the house, and then how much you're going to spend on it. And those estimates are going to get better with time. We were lucky enough to have 3 people looking at this, and so we have 3 sets of eyes on everything. And so our estimates came in fairly accurately, because we can kind of average out what we all think we're going to spend. Then, we got pretty close on a lot of stuff. But the other part is, don't sweat every single dollar on this. Dumpsters, we spent $2,000 instead of $500. Well, that's $1,500. But then the bathrooms, we budgeted $6,000 and spent $3,000. So, at the beginning, you don't want to be off like that, but hopefully you're off over on some stuff and under on some stuff, and then it kind of washes out in the end.
Yep.
And then I know that we put a 10%, we figured out what our number was, and then we put a 10% buffer on that as well. So, all right, our budget came out to, I believe it was like 59 and change. So we just rounded up to 60, and then 10%. All right. So we're looking at 66,000 for our rehab budget overall. We've at least got that extra wiggle room in there. And that's something that I think, for our first, second, third, fourth deals, we're going to keep adding that in. But as our numbers get tighter and tighter, we can start, okay, maybe we only have an 8% cushion and then a 6% cushion. And that way we can start getting more aggressive in our purchase prices.
And there's going to be surprises that pop up too, and things that you can't plan for. So, one of the things that we probably came out to be a benefit that we didn't necessarily expect to be as much of a benefit was the location. And I should back up a second and just say our intention with this project was to be more hands-on so
Right.
that we could learn more about it to be less hands-on. In the future, it would be awesome to sit in our ivory tower and have, play project manager and everybody else does all the work. But we wanted to probably lean in a little bit more. And we ended up leaning in more than we thought we would in terms of some of the hands-on work. But the goal here was to be more involved so we could learn it so that we could then be more leveraged through others in the future. So that was intentional for us. And I think one of the things that worked in our favor is we just happened to find a property that was pretty darn close for all of us. And had that not been the case, some of the other properties we were looking at, I think would have been a lot more challenging for us because there's more drive time back and forth. A trip for you and me was 6, 7, 8 minutes, whereas if it was a 20-minute drive or a 30-minute drive, that would have made a bigger difference. Now obviously if we were less hands-on, that matters less in the future, but because we wanted to be more involved, that's something that kind of stumbled in our favor.
Absolutely. That allowed, since we were so hands-on, that allowed for, oh, I don't feel like I'm wasting my time if I drive over there, but I've only got 90 minutes.
Hmm.
It's I got 90 minutes of work for 10 minutes of driving versus, an hour of work for an hour of driving. So it was a big deal there. And
Hmm.
I'm going to go back, one step further. You said sit in the ivory tower and be the project manager. I'm going one step further. I want to purchase the deal and then hand the whole thing off and somebody else project manages the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
that's the that's the end step for me, is just finding the deals, and then maybe we have multiple crews, but I would love to get to a point where, oh no, we can't buy any more deals because we don't have enough people to work. Like I don't
Hmm.
think we'll ever get to that point, but that's kind of the goal here. And as much as I enjoyed some of the work, there were definite times of not enjoying the work as well. So I could see
Hmm.
there being a definite happy medium in there of doing some projects, within
Hmm.
some of these flips, but definitely not to the extent that we did on this project.
That being said, Mike, what our involvement was is we still obviously had licensed contractors
Mhm.
doing the licensed work. And so, if you go back to the house hacker trying to do everything themselves, I mean, we had a lot of work that a lot of great people helped us with that we didn't even have to do. So if you think about what kind of the worst case
What could have
scenario, if
been
somebody
done.
wanted to take on all the work, man, we still be maybe interviewing or doing this podcast episode a year from now because we wouldn't have been done. So we did have some great licensed contractors that did the work that they needed to do, and obviously that the city required them to do. So we still only did some of the sheetrock, the painting, the some of the demo stuffs, the outdoor work, the curb appeal type stuff, and
Mhm.
we still found ourselves over involved than what we probably anticipated we wanted to do.
When you kind of list out the major things that we had help with: roofing and siding, plumbing, electrician,
Hmm.
and then I think maybe a gas line was, yeah, we moved one
Yeah, the
gas line,
gas
so
line. We ended up having a furnace that had to be installed,
yeah,
which
that there was a
surprises, right?
surprise.
Things you can't plan for is when the furnace goes
Um,
out in the winter in Minnesota.
but yeah, just thinking about the roofing and siding, the electrician and the plumber, like, yeah, that was a massive amount of man hours that were put into this project that we paid for, and we still ended up working a ton more than we thought we were going to work. In addition to the hours we thought we would put in, we worked a ton more. But yeah, like you said, this was, the learning deal. This was my first flip, and I think I went into it with the thoughts of, oh, this is, we're going to make a lot of money. I'm going to put in, some hours. A little bit of background on myself: I've helped my dad with projects since I was tiny. It started
Hmm.
off, holding the light for him and his common saying, "Can you see? Because I can't." And, now we're up to the point where, okay, I'm doing some projects on myself. We learned a ton about how much work actually goes into this. That
Hmm.
would be the first thing I think I learned. And then by the end of it, I was just happy to be knowing, all right, we're listing soon, so we're not at the final process here, but we'd have to drop in price pretty significantly to not make any money. So we're at least going to come out positive, I feel I can say.
Hmm.
But really the win here is just the massive amount of knowledge that I got from this.
Yeah, so I think for folks then to kind of understand the scope of the project, let's just maybe walk through a little bit, what the work was that was involved on the property. So when we kind of look at exterior first, right?
Yep.
We had somebody that came in and did all the siding for the house and the garage, new roof for the house and the garage. We had a lot of tree trimming that needed to be done, and I think trimming probably understates the amount of work that had to be done because there was branches sitting on the roof. So it's a nice half-acre lot. There's a lot of room there, and it was just clouded with a lot of clutter. So we cleaned a lot of that out, opened up the space so that people could see all the room that there was, and then just kind of the normal, throw down some mulch and that kind of stuff too. So I think that's and a retaining wall, right? There was a, probably what 30-foot long retaining wall, about a foot and a half high, that was just old and dilapidated and need to be refreshed. So I think that's probably the scope of the exterior work. The junk removal was significant on the garage was basically completely full of stuff. It had two sheds behind it that were completely full of stuff. And so when
Mhm.
we talk about the dumpster removals, there was just a lot more stuff than we anticipated that could fit into a dumpster.
Yeah, that was our first thing that we did was, weekend one, get in there and all right, your first thing you get to do is you get to demo stuff, which is pretty exciting when you do it. One, you just closed down a house, so you've got this house and you're ready to go. And then two, you get to swing a big hammer or use a crowbar or whatever necessary tool you need to remove this stuff. So that's pretty fun. But on this one, we ended up signing an as is addendum, so we got all of the stuff that was left over in the garage and the sheds, and yeah, they were definitely full. I mean, now we obviously know we used 4 dumpsters on this project, but even looking back, for the amount of stuff that was left over, I mean, it should have been at least 2 dumpsters that we thought about, one for the stuff and one for the house project. It's the little things like that, just knowing, all right. I mean, this is just one house, but it was an 1,100 square foot house. We turned it into, I mean, we didn't change the foundation size or anything, but 1,100
Hmm.
finished square feet to 1,600, and we
Hmm.
used 80 yards of dumpster. So if you're
Yeah, it's not a big house to begin
no,
with.
eye opening, at least on my part, to see how quickly those dumpsters could really fill up. So
Hmm.
yeah, roof siding on both the house and the garage, the tree trimming, which is a complete understatement for how much tree trimming was done,
Yep.
and the retaining wall. And then on this one specifically as well, there's one more tree still in the front yard, that is city compliance, needs to be removed.
Hmm.
So in our instance, since the city has agreed to remove it, but they haven't gotten around to it yet, we'll be escrowing the money for that so that the new buyer does not have to deal with that. It'll just be already into the purchase agreement that the money
Hmm.
is escrowed for it. And when the city can get to it, they'll take care of it. So
Yep.
again, like a lot of processes, just knowing, city ordinances, and in this case, a specific city, they went through and they had marked the tree. So once we
Yep.
saw that, because
And that
that
was
happened.
unanticipated. I think it was
Yep.
probably the first week or two we were there.
Yeah,
The
that
city
happened
had
pretty
come
quick.
through and marked all these trees for emerald ash borer, in our street and pretty much the whole town they marked it. So when we bought it, we didn't know that that was going to happen. And the cost isn't a significant cost, but at the same time, that's a surprise cost, I guess, or an unplanned cost that
Mhm.
popped up that thankfully it wasn't significant, but at the same time it's not something we could plan for, which I think that's some of the learning here too, is there's stuff that pops up you can't plan for and you just roll
Yep.
with it.
And then the other thing on, since we're talking about ordinances, when we purchased the house, there was a sewer compliance issue.
Hmm.
So this was known beforehand, and the listing agent had already gotten a quote. We verified the quote before we closed on the property so that we could, say, I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but we just used that in our budget. And
Hmm.
so that was another thing where, just it was known ahead of time, which was nice. And so we could budget for it. It was an exact dollar amount. So that was
Hmm.
something where we didn't have to guess. So that was really nice. I think we've talked about multiple times, in the future that we would enjoy more of those exact quotes beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
because it was nice knowing for, I want to say it was like 7,400. I think, for 7,400, this sewer thing is going to be taken care of. And all we have to do is call in and say, this date, come out here. And so
Mm-hmm.
that worked very smooth. Since it was an issue before the close of the house as well, and it was a city compliance issue, the buyer, we used investors to fund the purchase. So
Mm-hmm.
the investors ended up, they had to escrow 1.5 times the amount. So just being upfront with them about, hey, you're going to have to escrow 10.5 into this account, but it's going to take care of this. And it's already, they were actually more happy doing that than getting the estimated amounts, just because they knew it's going to
Mm-hmm.
cost $7,400. So there's no unforeseen things happening on that side.
So then, kind of thinking about interior, do you want to walk through just so people get an idea of the scope of that?
For sure. Like we alluded to earlier, electrical and plumbing was all done by licensed contractors.
Mm-hmm.
One, we didn't want to do that much work. We already were taking on a large amount of work with what we were agreeing to do on the project side. And two, again, they're licensed contractors. So we've got the permits, we've got the licensing, and so when we go to sell the house, we have all that documentation, so it helps on that side as well.
And
And
there's things that they have to bring up to current code,
correct.
depending on where we're at. And I think, they added a lot of outlets, even so there's, like you said, we added 500 square feet. So they obviously had to add stuff where we didn't have stuff to finish it off. But even the current stuff, there was a lot of new switches, outlets, lights to bring things up to current code. That was
Mhm.
really important. And so that was nice to have, the licensed electrician to do all that work, and
Exactly.
and for the city to sign off on everything. That's what you have to do, is have that licensed contractor do that work. So, and even
Yeah.
something that wasn't, I would say we didn't anticipate in the beginning, like adding the water line to add a dishwasher. Like we didn't think about that. And then as we started to talk about the kitchen layout and what we wanted, we're like, oh yeah, we want to make sure. I think somebody had recommended, hey, this doesn't have a dishwasher. You want to make sure you've got a dishwasher. And it's like, oh yeah, and we don't have the plumbing for that, so we need to hire somebody to do the plumbing. So I think that was an example of unexpected cost that we kind of knew. I mean, obviously we planned for appliances as a dishwasher, but realizing, oh, we need to add the water line.
Correct.
And then when we decided to change the layout of the kitchen, moving a gas line, so having a licensed person come out and move that gas line. There's a few things that were unanticipated in that point. And then, really the switches, the outlets, and all that, we had no clue what needed to happen. So, we tried to estimate a rough cost at the beginning, but until you start to get bids, and I think that brings up a good point. This was a property that we wanted to move quickly on. We didn't have time to submit out to everybody to get us bids. So it was kind of best case guess scenario on the quotes. And it wasn't until we got the actual quotes that we found out how close we were, with
Mhm.
some of those expenses. And, like the average person, and I don't want to scare people, the average person's not going to know what the electrical code is in terms of how many outlets need to get added, what lines need to be moved. And so either you have to be willing to come up with a best guess rough number for your estimate before you buy the property, or you want to risk bringing in somebody to come and give you an accurate quote. The likelihood of that property being gone is strong as well. I mean, we made this purchase late summer. It was still a hot market. So you're balancing that risk reward of, I may not have all the information, so I'm going to have to make the best decision I can with the information I have. And in some regards, kind of cross your fingers and hope you're close enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say this was on market for like 4 days before we closed. So it was basically on market. And then he was calling, listing agent was calling for highest and best by the end of the weekend. So
Mm-hmm.
we were for sure in a situation where, yeah, we need to just come up with our own numbers. Now, moving forward, one of the goals of this project as well was to build the relationships with those contractors so that we could use them in the future. And one of the things we would like to use them for, in addition to the work, is, hey, we are really serious about property X. can you get over there in the next 24 hours and give me a bid on this?
Mm-hmm.
And if you've already done business with somebody, then they're more likely to say yes to that. So that was a huge part of why we did this as well. But if you don't have that information available, yeah, you need to decide how willing you are to move, what your risk factor is. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with your own estimates and possibly being off on those estimates, then yeah, move forward with the property. And if you're not comfortable, then just wait and see what happens, and then
Mm-hmm.
go with, there's going to be another property, and it'll happen for you eventually, but you have to make those decisions for yourself.
Yep. And I know, I think with roofing and siding, at least there was one rough quote where they were able to just pull up Google Maps and kind of mark, and based on the square footage, give a quote.
Yeah.
So I think that's something too, where, yeah, it may not hurt to have a few people that you could at least attempt to reach out before you put in a bid, or they could look, depending on the quality of the interior pictures, like the kitchen as an example, an electrician could look at those pictures maybe and say, oh, we need to do this and this and this. But at the same time, you need to have an idea of what your rough layout's going to be. So there's some moving pieces there. And I think that's the value of what we learned, as well as, yeah, we're not going to know everything. It would be nice to just say, okay, this property went live. Let's line up our contractors. And at this time, this person's going to come in and we're going to have all of our quotes, and then we submit our offer. It's just not
Yeah.
going to be that smooth. And fair too to the contractors, like, their time is valuable too. They're not going to want to just sit and give quotes to everybody who shows them MLS pictures or, whatever pictures. And I may or may not get this property. I may or may not get the work. So we want to be respectful of them too. So it's finding that balance between cost benefit for them of, can you give us a quote? This is a realistic option,
Hmm.
or just coming up with a rough number, and you're hoping we're high on a few, but we're going to be low on a few others, and it's going to balance out.
Yeah, and I think, one thing we learned for sure is to get more accurate numbers, we need to have a more detailed plan in place for a lot of these projects. When we closed on this property, when we bought it, our plan for the kitchen was redo kitchen. I'm pretty sure that's about what we came up with. And
Yep.
so, we knew, okay, we're going to buy all new appliances. We knew we were going to buy all new cabinets and put in new countertops. We
Mm-hmm.
knew we were going to redo everything, but we hadn't laid it out.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't realize, just small things. The microwave needs to be on its own circuit. Okay. If you know that ahead of time, that's not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
If you wait until afterwards, now you got to find a circuit. So
Mm-hmm.
just a little bit more planning ahead of time on a lot of these things would have kind of gotten rid of some of the headaches later on. So that's a huge part of what we learned. And then, on that vein, it's almost better to take out more stuff than it is to leave stuff, because that first weekend was demo weekend, and we went through and we got rid of a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were still taking stuff out, a week or two before we, finished remodeling, because it was like, oh, well, we got to take this out now.
Yep.
And I think that'll come with, all right, here's our plan.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's not a part of this plan needs to go. And so
Mm-hmm.
that will help facilitate knowing what's going to be a part of the plan, is having that more detailed plan ahead of time. So
Mm-hmm.
even if we had, waited another week or even 2 weeks after we closed before demo weekend and come up with a plan, I think that would have saved more time in the long run on the overall project time length, due to the fact that we would have had that to look back at. Yeah, the other things we did in there, then we started with 1,100 finished square feet and we finished over 1,600. So some interior framing was done for that. So a lot of the space went into the basement. I added a third bedroom down there, and then added a family room down there. Sheetrock would be probably the biggest nightmare in my opinion on the project. It was, I think, budget wise, we were pretty close on this one for estimating the cost. We were just about 100 times off on the amount of effort that it would take and the amount of time and energy. So
Yep.
this would be one. I mean, we're all in agreement that we will never ever be sheetrocking, mudding, or taping on any of our projects ever again. So if you're looking for some work as a sheetrock contractor, you know where to get a hold of us. But
Well,
yeah,
and I think the scope of it changed a little bit when we're also realizing like, oh, um, you know, in the living room as an example, we ended up re-sheetrocking it when the initial plan was we weren't going to re-sheetrock it,
yep,
and then it's like, well, as long as we're doing this, we'll do this. And so I think the scope of it grew over time. And
yep,
then two, just realizing I know we all knew that mudding is a skilled labor and we're not as skilled in that.
yep.
But I think the amount of time to do that is, yeah, like you said, is just kind of what soaked up a lot of that kind of final push.
Yeah. So I want to say it was probably like 2 solid weeks
Mm-hmm.
of sheetrocking, just hanging, mudding, sanding over and over again. So that was definitely a big time suck for us by the end of the project. Now
Mm-hmm.
it all got done, but it was
Yep.
more work than we thought it was going to be. And then yeah, kitchen, we got all new cabinets, countertops, and that was something again where we decided, okay, well, hanging cabinets. None of us had ever done it before, but that's what YouTube is for, and we were able to look up on there, and with a level and some patience, you can draw it on the walls and figure out where everything goes, and that worked out pretty well. All the cabinets have stayed hung on the walls, which is
Mm-hmm.
nice. And then we redid one bathroom. I'd say partially got a new tile floor, new vanity,
Mm-hmm.
um, some new fixtures in there, and then one bathroom we completely redid. I mean, it was a bathroom, but it was barely a bathroom. So it was basically a roughed in shower and then a sink and a toilet. So it was
Mm-hmm.
very basic. So that one again, all new tile floor, tiled shower, new toilet vanity, all of that stuff. So did
Mostly vinyl plank flooring
yeah,
throughout,
mostly vinyl plank. We did
90%.
carpet in the basement bedroom since that would be a little more comfortable and warm for a Minnesota home. And then yeah, vinyl plank everywhere else.
I mean, I think if you take a step back when we looked at purchase price, rough budget, and then list price, we're pretty close to where we thought we would be. Longer than we thought, so probably some holding costs that
Yep.
are higher. But in terms of purchase, repair cost, sale price, we were pretty close. And like we mentioned, the stuff that pops up that we didn't plan for, we had a furnace repair, and then 2 weeks later we had a furnace go out. And so that's an expense that wasn't planned for, and yet at the same time absolutely necessary in the Minnesota winter. And obviously the new buyer is going to really appreciate a brand new furnace. We planned well. I think we'll know a lot of things to be able to plan for better, but in terms of the numbers themselves, we shook out pretty close.
Yeah, it definitely, I think especially for our first one, I think we were pretty close on a lot of things. And yeah, we came in slightly over our rehab budget and slightly under what we're listing for, but missing by those small margins still allows for a solid profit on our first flip and put in more time than we thought we would, especially in the last 6 weeks or so. But
Mm-hmm.
again, that was another learning thing is okay, now that I've done that, I don't ever want to do that again. So there should be a healthy profit on the end of this in addition to the learning.
For maybe 4.5 months is what it took. And I know a lot of people would
Mhm.
like to flip, maybe 2 to 4 months, maybe 3 to 4 months. So we were on the long end, probably 4.5 ish. Probably front loaded our time less than we thought, and we back end loaded it more than we thought. And then, in the future, Mike, what are you thinking in terms of, how is this going to open up some doors for future opportunities?
Yeah, I think with everything that we learned on this one, it's gonna allow me to better estimate, costs on projects, process on the whole thing, and to make so I'll be able to make not only quicker decisions but better decisions, I think, on properties that we find that are potential for this. So that if we're in a situation where again we have a day or two, let's say, to make a decision on something, we can go through and, take the tour ourselves of the property, get our eyes on it, put in our estimates, and then determine, okay, are we within a comfortable margin for moving forward on this deal, and what would our high end offer be? As you hone those numbers in, as you get more experienced at this, I think that'll be the biggest thing, is knowing what to offer on the property and how much you're going to make at the end of the day. And so, the next step will be, all right, if I'm not doing as much work myself, how much am I paying, contractor, a framer, somebody to hang the cabinets, somebody to do the flooring for us, all the sheet rocking, the first person we're hiring, the sheet rocker, accounting for all of those things, and then saying, well, is it worth it if the max profit on this is only half of what it was on this first one? Then it's still worth it, though, because my time commitment is 1/10 of what it was. And figuring out how to make that work so that I'm still a real estate agent 90% of the time throughout the entirety of this process, rather than being a real estate agent for the first 3 months and then being a construction worker for a month. So making sure that doesn't happen again, and having the skills and knowledge.
A sheetrock sander for a month.
Yeah, sheetrock sander was a solid week of my life. Did not see that one coming, but that happened.
Looking back, excited for the experience. And like we said, thinking about building wealth, it's going to take some sacrifice to be able to learn some things in the future, or learn some things for the future, being able to be more efficient, sharper with the numbers, build some great relationships with people. Like, that's the future here. And this was, I talk a lot about, treating the first one as an education. We got a good education, and it's something we can apply moving forward, and be able to leverage more things off of our plate, and be able to share in the profits with hiring more people. And at the same time, now we get time back, like you said, to continue to be real estate agents, to continue to leverage what we do best, which is finding and picking great properties, letting the other folks do what they do best, which is the skilled labor. And through that, we should be able to leverage more flips or renovations in a year's time with less of our time. So Mike, if anybody wants to chat with you more about what it was like being a first-time flipper, how can they reach out to you or get a hold of you or chat with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach me at Mike Gengler at eliteadvantageteam.com, or you can call me at 763-477-2918. And if you're looking to invest yourself or have questions about being a flipper yourself, would be more than willing to share my experiences and my expertise on subjects.